Hello and welcome to the Vergecast, the flagship podcast of integrating apps into 5G, a plan that totally worked. And now we live in a utopia of robot surgery and video conferencing, low latency video conferencing.
We're the flagship podcast of all of that.
Yeah, the whole thing.
It's a lot to be the flagship podcast of.
There's not a lot of competition in the space, and that's business, baby. You gotta find your niche. I'm your friend Nilay. David Pierce is here.
Hi, I too am integrated into 5G.
Alex Cranz is here. Alex is in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm in San Francisco wondering, who isn't integrated into 5G at this point? Come on, guys, get it together.
I saw in one of the trade publications, I saw a headline that was like, the hottest thing in 5G isn't public 5G networks. And
what is it?
It's private 5G. Like, obviously, the
sure.
other thing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So they've given up on us, the lowly public, and your private 5G network for warehouse operations is where the money is. And I just want to go back in time and show people that headline in meetings. You're lying.
The hottest thing in public 5G is still slightly faster Netflix downloads in the airport before you get on the plane.
Which isn't bad. It's I don't hate
something.
it. We could have just fixed the Wi-Fi networks in the airport. I think we would have gotten there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this is not the flagship podcast of any of that, although I promise you there will be a slight amount of telecom 5G dunking in this episode of the Vergecast.
It's every episode.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, as is our right.
A lot to talk about this week. A bunch of streaming news this week. Slack had a redesign. We have some reader emails, which are always fun. There's some CarPlay news to get into. Got a Mr. Beast update. There's just a lot going on, like a summer grab bag. But like we did last week, we want to begin by just getting the Elon news out of the way. We know you like it, even though you tell us you don't like it. I don't know how to describe this exact phenomenon. You tell us loudly you hate it in the comments of the post that you have clicked on, read to the bottom, and then left comments on. It is a weird dynamic, but we know you want it. So, David, can you just give us quickly all of the Elon news this week that's worth talking about?
Sure. Okay. Here is everything I've compiled that has happened this week that matters. All right, that's it. Does that help? Everybody feel good?
It's beautiful.
That's all the news in the world of Elon that is actually worth noting this week. Just a dull roar of noise. And that's where we are this week with Elon.
I will say the only actual Elon thing I will say is that Casey Newton wrote a very good issue of Platformer that we also ran on The Verge about how we talk about Elon that I thought was very good and very instructive, and people should go read that.
Yep, it's on the site. It's on Platformer. Go read it. Casey's great. Okay, let's talk about some actual news. We've been sort of talking about this moment in streaming, the two strikes that are going on, the interlocking strikes between the writers and the actors. Bob Iger gave an interview to CNBC a while ago that set everything astray. Then there was some news that said the writers are coming back to the table at the studios. Disney had earnings, which were really revealing. Alex, what is going on in the world of streaming?
Well, I think the big thing is Disney's hiking the price of Hulu and Disney Plus, but only the ad-free version. So if you're already paying $7.99 a month for the ads, you're fine. Keep enjoying all of those beautiful ads. If you were like me trying to avoid the ads, the prices have gone up. Disney Plus is now going to cost $13.99, and then Hulu no ads is going to cost $17.99. But if you want to keep both, you can just pay $19.99.
Oh boy.
And it's all very I think the streamers were looking out in the world and they were thinking, okay, how can we make this pricing scheme make sense? And they just looked to cell phone providers. That's my best guess, because it's just hot, confusing garbage.
Can I just say there's a table in the story we wrote about the price hike that lays out the different prices that you can pay for Disney's various streaming services. And it is deranged how complicated this is. If you want Disney Plus, there's 2 options. If you want Hulu, there's 4 options, including one that is an ESPN Plus with Hulu add-on, which I guess is also Hulu. If you want ESPN Plus, there's 3 other ones. If you want bundle offerings, there's 3 other ones. And if you just want Hulu with plus live TV, there's 2 other ones. So basically you have like 400,000 different ways to get all of Disney's content. But it's abundantly clear, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, that the thing Disney would really like you to do is pay $7.99 and watch ads.
Yeah, because why have a streaming service when you can just have a couple of cable channels where you don't have to deal with cable carriers? Like, if I'm a business person, that makes a lot of sense to me. If I'm a person who wants anything to be nice and effortless and work smoothly, it makes no sense. But like the business case makes a lot of sense, and I hate it because it makes so much sense. But yeah, we're just kind of like back to cable again. But we have to do it all ourselves, which is, I mean, that was the point, right? Like that was the initial promise of this all, right? Like we were going to cut our cables and then we were going to be really happy because we could just choose and I would never have to pay for ESPN again.
Yeah, I think what I'm learning now in my old age is that by making everyone pay for everything, we subsidized a lot of the niche stuff.
Yeah.
So everyone that was forced to pay for ESPN, that made them a lot of money, just a lot of money that they could then subsidize a lot of stuff with.
Like the Disney Channel.
Right. And then when you break it all up and you say, everyone pay for exactly what you want, it turns out like everyone will pay for exactly what they want and everything will make smaller. Like the pie will stay the same size, but it will have more slices, and that's not great. And so it's very clear they're trying to get back to, okay, you pay for access to this. The advertisers will come in because the advertisers will spend a lot of money, and that'll give us the margin to go subsidize all the other stuff. It's not clear if that's going to work either, but that's just very much where they would like to go back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is deeply hilarious to me how quickly we're going back to it should just be like cable, but better. And it's like, if you could just go back 20 years and be any of these big cable providers, and if they were just like, what if we just let people pick the shows they wanted to watch and changed nothing else, they would have just dominated the universe for forever. Because it turns out that's all people actually wanted. Like, I just want to choose what show is on. Turned out to be the only behavior anybody actually wanted to change. Everything else was like pretty all right in most cases.
Well, there was a sports agnostic folks like who didn't want to have to pay for ESPN. And now I don't have to. Although I do actually pay for ESPN.
Yeah, but all the people who watched ESPN were paying for the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon and all of the other stuff on your TV that got funded by the fact that ESPN made so much money. Like ESPN was such a cash cow for Disney that it funded all this other stuff. And so it's just like, in a way, this system like didn't make any sense, but actually seems like it kind of worked. Except that cable was bad and expensive.
Yeah, I'm saying, look, every like 15 years or so, there's like a lawsuit from someone who's like, my taxes go to the military, and I don't want my taxes to go to the military, and then they lose.
That was us. That was us, ESPN haters.
Right. It's like, and then like the lawsuit goes, and the court's like, no, that's not how taxes work. Like, you pay your taxes, the government gets decided. That's ESPN. ESPN is the military-industrial complex. And we, the American consumers, should be forced to pay our taxes because that subsidizes like the 35th show on the Disney Channel. Well, and that's how like, that's going to work.
Do you know how that like your Google Maps knows where you are? Like, thank the military for GPS being a thing, right? It's like, it turns out like all this stuff is connected a little more than you think.
So, but this is like, it's up, like Disney had earnings, right? And their earnings are mixed bag. Earnings are never that interesting to talk about, but they lost a bunch of subscribers in India because they lost the rights to cricket. So Disney Plus is coming back down to earth, but the parks are doing well. And it's just unclear what new content they will have because of the strikes. Iger notably was like, I hope we can figure this out this time. Whereas a few months ago, he was like, I'm very disturbed by these sick bastards. You know, like the tone has shifted a little bit. And it just seems clear, like Disney, they've got to power through this moment and actually have stuff worth buying and watching. And it's sort of unclear what that stuff is going to be.
Well, and that's part of this too, is like, you think, okay, they did the Disney Plus and Marvel was supposed to be a big subscriber. Like the main reason people subscribe to Disney Plus is because they have children. But everybody who doesn't have children, myself included, we want to, like, why would we want to go subscribe? And the idea was, okay, well, you're going to subscribe for Star Wars and you're going to subscribe for Marvel. And then all those shows are kind of garbage.
Yeah, it sounded like a pretty compelling argument. And even at the beginning, it was pretty good. Like, WandaVision was great. The Mandalorian was great. It was like it started well, and then just over the course of the next few years, they just systematically got worse, right as all the other factors got harder for Disney. And so it's just like this perfect storm of like, what is the pitch here? And it seems to get harder and harder all the time.
You could not pay people to care about Secret Invasion, which was the latest Marvel show. I watched all of it. I know what happened. Do I ever want to talk with anyone else about it? No.
You like barely want to admit that you watched it.
like
Here's my understanding of
watched
Secret Invasion, just to be clear. I have not watched it. I've barely paid attention to it. It's the show where everyone is revealed to be an alien so that they can recast new actors in those roles in the next movies.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of like that's a big part of it. And it was just kind of like a boring show that didn't have a lot of impact on the overarching thing. And
But my sense of it is the reveal in every episode is this beloved character has always been an alien. Yeah,
like, and then we don't know how long they've been aliens.
The show is just like, it's like an intermission between Marvel things. They're just like, we're going to reboot the show over 7 different episodes. And then at the end of it, new Avengers.
It was so bad.
Like it's cynical on its face. Like even I know that much about it.
Yeah.
Which I don't even think that's spoilers. Like the show's called Secret Invasion. I think that's what it is on the tin.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think I spoiled anything about the show for anyone. But it's like, oh, we need some new actors. So what if all the old actors are revealed to be aliens and then they get in a spaceship and go back to their home planet? And it's like, oh, you guys are really out of ideas here.
I think they end up staying. I think they end up
Oh,
staying.
they stay? No, that's a spoiler, Alex. Not
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Never mind, guys.
So
Go
but
catch
the big
up and watch
picture
it.
here is just generally across the streaming market, Disney has these problems. They're going to start doing some Netflix movies, right? They're going to actively explore cracking down on password sharing, which seems to have worked really well for Netflix. They keep gesturing at the idea of selling themselves to Apple.
Okay. I want to this is what I want to call. I'm going to drop a curse word here. This is utter bullshit. This happens like every time. Apple is one of those companies that has a ton of money and they always have a ton of cash around, right? And so everybody's like, oh, what should they do with it? And like 6-7 years ago, it was like, they should buy Netflix.
Yeah.
And they were never going to buy Netflix because that doesn't make sense.
First of all, they absolutely should have bought Netflix.
Yeah, it would have been great then, but they were never going to because it didn't make sense. And the idea that they were going to go and like Tim Cook, whose entire thing is like making money by being really smart about logistics, is going to take on the cruise and the theme park industry. Tim Cook's about to retire. Like he doesn't.
Yeah, that's why you buy Disney at the end. And you're like, look, Bob Iger, you hate retiring. Have you thought about being the CEO of it? Here you go. I bought Disney. I'm Tim Cook.
Yeah, now you go and do
my
all
swan
the
song
keynotes.
is headsets and cruises together at last. And then he just rides off in
That's
the
a very
sunset
like retiree swan
on
song.
a horse made of money. This is the future of cruises.
Yeah.
Is you get on and you put on your Apple Vision Pro on your Disney cruise and you sit in a recliner.
But you're not actually on a boat at all. You're just at home.
You have a little
you're in a soundstage that
assistant.
rocks. This is, by the way, the plot of WALL-E, so a little worried. But at least at the end, they save Earth.
I don't know. So the Disney Apple thing has always seemed suspicious to me, like to the point where I have always agreed with you, Alex, that this is like a thing people say because it sort of seems like it makes sense, but never was actually real. But the 2 things that happened this week that I thought were very interesting were Kim Masters at The Hollywood Reporter, who is very much like a person who knows everything about what's happening in Hollywood.
Yes.
Wrote a one of those stories that is like half reported and half speculative, but it's only speculative because you can't say out loud the things that other people have said to you that you know for sure, right? Like reading between the lines, this thing is like very accurate and very well sourced about basically, hypothetically, if you were Disney, here is what you would do if you wanted to sell your company to Apple. You would divest, you would pull the different pieces apart, and you would essentially turn yourself into a company full of characters and IP without a lot of stuff attached to it. And then you would sell that to Apple. And then you look around and, oh, that's exactly what Bob Iger kind of sounds like he wants to do with Disney. And so that happened. The piece is very good. We have it linked on The Verge. We should put it in the show notes too. Like Kim is a person who knows things.
Yeah.
And I trust, I don't think Kim is like making this up out of whole cloth. And then the other thing was somebody on Disney's earnings call asked Bob Iger directly something to the effect of, are you selling to Apple? And his answer was, he said, basically, I'm not going to say anything. It's not something that we obsess about. And then he said, obviously, anyone who wanted to speculate about these things would have to immediately consider the global regulatory environment. And then he said, I'll say no more than that. How do you not read that as, gosh, I'd really like to, but Lena Khan and the FTC super would not allow it to happen? Like, I don't know how else to read that statement from Bob Iger.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the fact that this isn't gonna happen. I mean, theoretically it could, right? Like I don't want to say it's never gonna happen, but it's very unlikely to, because the EU would come down on that new combined company and just destroy it. Like, they would never allow it to happen. And it would be just borderline unconscionable for the FTC to let two of the biggest companies, the company that has like a practical monopoly in the theater space, practical monopoly in all these other spaces, and the biggest like company that has the app store monopoly, combine into one mega company. Like, that's bad business unless you're Bob Iger.
All right, I'm gonna make the argument.
Do it.
Be Bob.
I'm coming back to Disney as CEO.
Wow. Congratulations.
The first thing Bob Iger says in every room. Look, I was leaving, but I'm coming back. Now here's the argument. I have two arguments to make. One is like a straightforward argument. We kind of went through this with Microsoft and Activision, and eventually the EU caved and the FTC lost, and like whatever, right? Like, it is the same shape of thing, right? The big distribution platform buys a bunch of content. We seem to not know how to stop it. It just happens. Fine. Maybe it will just happen. I don't know if it will, but obviously Bob Iger is thinking about the global regulatory environment. Then there's, I think, what I would frame as the chaos argument, which is let them dance. You know, like, this is how companies fall apart, is like they get too big and then this thing seems unmanageable, and like Apple's corporate culture will crush Disney. Yeah. And then maybe we'll be free. You know, it's like, that's like, it's the worst argument I can make. It is, I would say, the argument that, for example, has proven to be correct in the case of every AT&T acquisition in history. But go ahead, buy Time Warner.
Yeah, I was going to say AOL Time Warner is exactly this kind of merger that you're describing also. Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, go ahead, try. Like, see if that works out for you. See if you are not destroyed by your own hubris. I'm not saying that's a great policy outcome. Many people lose their jobs along the way, and lots of art doesn't get made. Although with Time Warner and AT&T, we did get the grayscale 4x3 Justice League, so that happened.
We're gonna get like a Marvel movie just shot all vertically, so it fits perfectly on your iPhone and profile. That's what you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't do it. I just think that, like, if I'm Tim Cook, I'm looking at the history of these kinds of integrations, and I'm saying, oh, actually, in the end, this never works out.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter about the regulators. Like, if you are a smart business person, you look at integrations of this size, and you're like, oh, this is death. Like, this is what kills both companies in like meaningful ways at the end of the road.
And he's told people no in the past, right? Like, wasn't there the one where Elon was like, please buy Tesla before Tesla was Tesla? Yeah. And he was like, LOL, get out of my office. How did you get in here?
Actually, speaking of things they should have bought, right? Like the many attempts that Apple has made to make a car.
Yeah.
It should have just bought Tesla.
Yeah.
They would have solved the panel gaps. I'll tell you that much. They wouldn't have cheaped out on the materials.
Your whole hand goes in those panel gaps.
Yeah, but this is the thing that comes up every time the like possibility of Apple acquiring some sexy company comes up. Like, do you remember a couple of years ago when Peloton was flagging and everybody was like, oh, Apple's going to buy Peloton? And then there were a couple of people, I think, including our friend Steve Kovacs at CNBC, who just basically raised their hand and were like, why on earth would Apple want Peloton? Like, why all these companies need Apple makes a lot of sense. Why Apple, the richest company on the planet that has done a very good job of developing the ability to do almost anything very well over time, why on earth would it need like a warehouse full of treadmills and bikes that no one is buying?
Yeah.
And in this case, like, what does Apple need with a theme park?
To sell iPhones.
They run a very nice theme park in Cupertino. It's a circle. You can go to
That's
it.
true.
Yeah, it's I guess like the basic business advice is like don't buy problems.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem. Like the future of streaming is a huge problem. Apple's involved in these strikes, right? They are part of the AMPTP. They're up against SAG. They're up against the Writers Guild. Disclosure, Alex is part of the Writers Guild. Our newsroom is unionized with the Writers Guild. I'm a Netflix producer. Comcast owns a chunk of the company. You should watch our Netflix show. It's great.
That was your best one yet. That was like all in one breath. That was really good.
Someone wrote to us and said, your disclosures are starting to sound like flexes, so I'm trying to... But it is true that I'm a Netflix producer. You should watch our Netflix show. It's great. It was nominated for an Emmy. That's all just really complicated for Apple. And this is like their first baby step in the water, right? They're not like a huge distributor of TV shows. Buying Disney is like now they're in it.
Yeah.
Like they're fully in. Like let's take an example. Jason Kilar took over at Time Warner, right? He took over Warner Media, and he was like, "Here's the thing we want to do. All the movies are going to go to streaming day and date." That is a thing that Apple would want to do to promote Apple TV Plus on their devices, and that thing broke Warner Media, pushed Kilar out of the CEO role, and we ended it with Discovery Max Plus, whatever it's called, Warner Brothers Discovery. Those are not easy. Those are culture decisions that you have to make. They're not business decisions. And I think Apple likes being at a remove. The thing that I would offer, and we have an entire episode about sports and streaming coming next week, but Apple's really into sports.
Yep.
And I think they really want to do sports in the Vision Pro in like a serious way. ESPN over the past couple months, and in particular last week, just sort of like casually rearranged the sports media market.
Yeah.
Right. They took Pat McAfee, who was kind of one of the biggest indie sports podcasters, video people. He had a deal with FanDuel. Disney just took him away. I think he was unhappy with that FanDuel deal. He's now just part of the ESPN lineup. Like big, huge, multi-million-dollar deal. And then this last week, Penn Gaming, which is another betting company, heavily invested in Barstool Sports. A lot of machinations there, but they basically just gave it back to Dave Portnoy, who is a controversial character in his own right, and said, you can have Barstool. We're going with Disney. We're going with ESPN. And ESPN opened up to betting for the first time in partnership with Penn. So just in the last few months, ESPN has just like repositioned some of the biggest indie names in sports media and entered betting. That's all just a lot, right? Those are power moves. Like This is how ESPN wants it to be. This is how ESPN is going to get it. That puts ESPN in the driver's seat of kind of the next turn of things, maybe. But it's not clear that Apple wants to be in like the betting business at all.
I mean, they already are.
No, I would say it seems overwhelmingly likely that Apple doesn't want to be in that business. Like to the extent that like betting apps are in the App Store seems to be only headache for Apple. And I can't imagine them signing up for the regulatory complications that come with that anytime soon. And I think like to your point about getting into this world fully, even with TV Plus, Apple has been sort of dragged kicking and screaming into the broader Hollywood landscape. Like it had to commit to spending a bunch of money to put its movies in theaters. It's slowly becoming more of a part of Hollywood, but even still, like Apple's whole thing is it likes things it can wrap its arms entirely around. And even if you own Disney, you just can't do that. So like I can see what Disney would want from Apple out of some, partnership. What's the phrase everybody uses? Special relationship that they had with Jobs, because Jobs owned Pixar, and there was it's like there's like a secret handshake. He was the largest shareholder of Disney. It wasn't a special relationship. He was the largest individual shareholder of Disney. Right. So he was like, I can call them. And they picked up the phone. Yeah, he and Bob had like a special handshake that they did. And they would like do butterfly kisses when they saw each other. And that was the Disney Apple relationship. But yeah, I tend to be with you, Cranz, that this won't happen. But I do think it is possible that we will get to a point where both companies want it to happen, but ultimately decide they can't. For a variety of reasons. We were hearing those rumors a couple of weeks ago that they might get rid of ESPN. They might sell off ESPN or something like that. That I could maybe see happening. But even then, it's back to like, does Apple want to get into gambling and also doing sports deals? Yeah.
Probably not.
It's a mess.
I think they want to do sports deals, not gambling.
I was just going to say, can we get a real quick strike update before we throw the break and move on from this stuff? Because I feel like a bunch of this stuff came up in these earnings calls, and people are back at the table, but not back at the table.
So it's all negotiations, which means everybody's going to have their own opinion on who's the one stepping back. Right now, the Writers Guild is saying, well, it's the producers. They're not coming to the table. They refuse to come to the table. And the producers are like, we're here. And so it's not clear. There's still definitely a lot of like discourse there and people upset with each other. But the Emmys have been delayed because of the strikes, because like you can't have a bunch like what good are the Emmys if you don't have a bunch of actors up on stage being like, yeah, I want an Emmy. Like it's just the technical Emmys, and those are really good, but they haven't televised those for years. So I don't think they're going to start now. And so you've got that. Paramount just came out and was like, well, we are totally set. We're fine. We can continue to weather this. And this is where I'm super suspicious of other companies who are like, yeah, I just don't know if we're going to have all the content we need, because they all knew these strikes were coming. They all knew this was going to be happening. They've all been banking shows for a while now to get through this. So any of them who say, well, I didn't know and everything, be super suspicious there. Like take a moment, look around and be like, is that true? Because it's certainly interesting. And everybody's going to keep doing this. This is going to be like, there's always, as this strike continues, you're going to have both sides expressing their truth, which is certainly the truth, but it's also specifically their versions of it. So, maybe Disney doesn't have enough content to get them through. They could bring Willow back instead of yanking it off of Disney Plus after a few months. I'm fine. I'm not bitter. It's okay.
Oh, this is how we get Batgirl back on Max.
Yeah. This is how we get it back.
See it.
They're like, oh my God, this actually will make us more money than the tax break saved us.
It's interesting. I'll just note, and then we should take a break. The last time there was a writer's strike, that's when reality TV happened.
Well, it was happening right before it.
Right, and the studios started investing in it and massively because it was cheaper. And then it became this like dominant form of media.
That's what a lot of them are planning on doing. Like a lot of them are going to carry through with that. But at the end of the day, especially because the actors are on strike, like you still want people like to see famous people. That's just the way it is. They want to see the famous people, and the famous people are all out picketing or staying in their houses going, yeah, you go picketers, and like Venmoing the strike fund occasionally.
Yeah, Will Smith is like, get my weird AI double from that bad movie that we shot in 120. Get him on the line.
He's just out there.
I can barely remember what that movie is called. The Gemini Man. Get the Gemini Man out there right now.
Gemini Man 2, 3, and 4 are all coming next year.
If we don't solve this, AI Will Smith is coming to your house.
That's the real threat.
Well, no, it's just like it was last time it was reality. This time it's going to be, what if we show you even more South Korean game shows? And like that's going to be it's going to be a weird thing to look at a few years from now if this doesn't get resolved soon, is all I'm saying.
Netflix is going to have a great time because they have a huge international library. So they're like set, Paramount set. Disney's the one I'm kind of surprised that they weren't set, because you would think Hulu's definitely set, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. After Only Murders in the Building season 3, like what is there on Hulu for anyone?
Yeah.
The Little Fires show with Reese Witherspoon that I never watched, but I know exists.
Love that. The Little Fires one. Everybody's favorite show.
Little Fires one.
For your consideration for the Emmys. The Little Fires one.
All right, that's enough. We will note here, just at the end, Barbie is over $1 billion at the box office.
Hell yes.
Without any Ryan Gosling, Margot Robbie promotion, because they're on strike too, which is also fascinating, and probably everyone's going to learn the wrong lesson from that. Okay, that's it. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. We're back in a hard transition from the state of streaming. We're now going to talk about enterprise software.
Yes.
Just pivot.
The two most important things.
David, you wrote about Slack's redesign this week. A lot going on with Slack. It's turning into Teams in a lot of ways.
Yeah, basically. It's a sort of delightful story because Teams spent several years during the pandemic just ruthlessly copying everything it could about Slack, and then just sort of decimating it because you get Teams for free by subscribing to Microsoft's many other products. Slack is a separate thing you have to pay for. So Teams sort of resoundingly won by just copying Slack. And now Slack, which got bought by Salesforce, as a half success story, half sort of retrenchment after being destroyed by Teams, is now just completely copying Teams. So they've added a new sidebar where there's like the home feed that kind of looks like Slack, but then there's also a DMs thing where you can see all your messages from all across Slack. There's an activity thing that'll show you every time you've been mentioned, or the reaction emojis, all that stuff. It's basically like they're trying to sort of filter your messages a little better so you can make more sense of the chaos of Slack, and also make it easier for you to find things like huddles and Canvas and some of these other features that they have. In general, the idea makes total sense to me. I think a lot of people are going to freak out because it does look pretty different, and it's a really different way of thinking about Slack. Like Slack, I don't know how you guys feel about it. It's pure chaos, but it is like an understandable kind of chaos. And I think shifting that is tough, especially for something like this. It's like people use this stuff for work all day, every day. And the idea of just like, we've put in a new icon always freaks people out.
Yeah. It's understandable chaos because most things in Slack are the same kind of thing. Yeah.
It's messaging. It's just a bunch of messages in a row.
Right. Here's a line of text that, it's like sent to someone or some room. And at worst, maybe you'll like send someone a line of text in the wrong context, and that's bad. Great. But like, it's all the same thing. And what's happening now with this redesign is like many more kinds of things are going to come to the front, like huddles and the Canvas thing, which is like a Google Doc for a room. And that's the turn that I think they've wanted to make for a long time. Like, this is where we work, and work involves lots of different kinds of communication and contexts, versus this is where you send lines of text to other people. And we'll see. Whereas Teams, we had a long conversation about Teams and like the Verge team Slack room, because Teams is much bigger, like an order of magnitude more users than Slack. And it is mostly in big companies used as a video conferencing application, not any of the other stuff.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of them still use Slack for like DMs and stuff. And then they use Teams for their video conferencing.
Which is bizarre.
Which is insane for like a bunch of reasons. Yeah.
The IT guy's just like, I got money to spend, man. I'm having a great time. Like, blowing that whole budget. Enjoy yourself, IT
If
guy.
you're not watching the video, Alex just made the like make it rain motion with her hands to describe an IT administrator buying Slack.
He already got Teams out there, and he's just throwing money around. They?
The thong song's playing.
Like,
Alex is like buying enterprise software.
That's how like, as a lover of enterprise software, that's how I think about it.
We'll see. I haven't gotten the new Slack update yet. David, are you using it?
I haven't gotten it yet either. It's going to roll out slowly. Slack always does this really slowly. They're like desperately afraid of making people nervous about changes. So you can like opt in to being fast or medium or slow and how you get updates. I think it's coming to free users first. Yes. Because like Slack doesn't care about you if you don't give them money. So just deal with the new thing. And then sort of slowly to everybody else. I'm very curious about it. But the reason I added it to the rundown, and we don't have to spend too long on this, but I think it's really interesting. We had this debate, ironically, in Slack after this story went up about why people care about Slack so much. Like just to let people into how the Verge works. I've written about Slack a lot over the years, and every time a ton of people read it in a way that if I write about like a new feature in Google Docs or Excel or these other, like in many cases, much more popular features, like sometimes they're like big new things, but in every case, it's like a teeny tiny iterative update to Slack, people care about a lot. And I have been trying to figure out why this is for a long time. Like, what is it about Slack that means this much to people in a way that like your average app you use at work doesn't really matter?
I think it's because people use Slack for their friends, and most enterprise software is just like not used that way. Like,
that's interesting.
That's just my thing. Is like you live in Slack for like a lot of things you do with other people. If you have a D&D group, there's a chance you have a Slack. Maybe you have a Discord.
We have a Signal, thank you.
Right. Like, but so many people just have Slacks for things.
Yeah.
Outside of work. And I think that means like everyone's just kind of interested. Like, here's this interface I have for communities on the internet that is changing. Or, the Slack just captured so much of the imagination to begin with that everyone is remains interested in it. But like Zoom isn't that thing. No one reads about when we do Zoom updates.
Well, with one recent exception, which we'll come back to.
But I am curious how this because I think you're right, Nilay, where it is people use this outside of this. How is that going to affect adoption when they change it? Because right now, if you go and you look at Discord and Slack, there's definitely some differences, but they fundamentally look a lot alike. And now it's not going to look like that way. One's going to be very for like business, and the other is going to be where your gamer friends say Mew Mew. And like, which is the one? I don't have gamer friends that say that, just to be clear.
You're the gamer friend who says that.
I'm the gamer friend who says that. Which is going to be the one? Like, are people going to still use it? Or are they going to look at it and be like, old people use that and click out of it?
So I have this like theory of competition in software. And I think it's best expressed with iOS and Android. They diverge in the way the interfaces look, and then they converge again, like all the time. And you can drive yourself crazy and certainly gain a lot of like hate replies on Twitter if you say iOS copied Android or Android copied iOS, right? Like that's the cycle they're in. But the reason they do that is very obvious, is that if you want people to switch between platforms, you have to lower the cognitive burden of switching.
Yep.
So if you are Google and you want people to switch from iOS to Android, you cannot have a radically different interface.
Right.
You need to welcome them in and say most of the things are in most of the same places, and the things that are different are substantially better for X, Y, or Z reason. And you can 100% argue over whether that is successful in the case of Android. But that's basically the thinking, right? Is like you got to make it easy to switch. If you are Slack and Microsoft Teams is way bigger than you, it makes all the sense in the world that you're going to make Slack look slightly more like Microsoft Teams to try to peel that market share back. What's interesting, to your point, Alex, is they're not looking more like Discord.
Yeah.
Because that's the other competitor. It's just no one wants to admit that Discord is a competitor. Like I had former Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield on Decoder ages ago. Might not have even been the Vergecast. Might have even been pre-Decoder. The last time I talked to him about this specific thing, he was like, yeah, I don't think Discord's a competitor. But it obviously is.
Right.
It's just in this moment, where's the money? The money is paid users of Microsoft Teams, not a bunch of randos in a crypto Discord. And
We're having a great time.
Yeah, Slack and Discord,
their life over there. Yeah.
Slack and Discord have been refusing to run at each other for years. Like I remember asking the Discord folks, I don't know, 4 years ago now, when are you doing Discord for Teams? And they were like, we don't want to mess with that. It involves a bunch of like compliance and administrative work we don't want to do. If you want to use it for work, great, but that's not officially what it's for. And Slack says literally the exact same thing in reverse. They're like, if you want to use it for personal stuff, that's awesome. Knock yourself out. That's not what it's for. And it's like these two companies just keep staring at each other, like refusing to acknowledge that they're actually doing the same thing.
Well, I think that's why Slack was so popular versus all of those competitors, right? Like, remember HipChat?
We were HipChat's shop for a minute.
Yeah, HipChat was at Campfire.
Yep.
And then like Teams is relatively new, and it was able to get an enormous market share because it's Microsoft and it already was in all of those spaces. And it was just like, hey, now we give you this free, cancel your Slack subscription. And so for the longest time, it was popular partially because it was such a social app in a way that Teams really isn't. And so it's like, okay, well, if you go that way, aren't you ruining why most people adopted it to begin with? And I haven't used it. I don't know. Like if it allows me to not accidentally broadcast things that I thought were DMs, great. I haven't done that in at least
the
4
Alex
months.
Cranz experience.
But I look forward to it. But I am like curious if that's going to happen.
And actually, ironically, Microsoft is the company that is trying to do both. Like it made all this noise a couple of years ago about Teams for families, which to me is just like outrageous.
That's just a threat. Yeah. That's like Excel for preschoolers. Like, we're coming for you.
Yeah, like Microsoft cannot let go of this idea that you should use its tools for your regular life. And to me, it's like if they had called it Microsoft Chat, it might have had a chance to be something. But if Nilay, can you imagine hanging up this call and going upstairs to Becky and being like, hey, let's plan in Teams?
No. Again, my goal in life is to not use software. It's just a stated goal. I think I've said this in the show. My ambition in like my career is not to accumulate more titles or power. It is to use as little enterprise software as possible. Like I just want to get to the place where people walk into my office. I don't have an office, so like I've got ages to go. But people like show me printouts of emails and I like sign them with the Sharpie.
I want this for you.
It's
Get you pictures of
all
Spider-Man.
I want is to not use enterprise software at work.
You have an attaché who carries your phone for you.
Yeah. And the masters of the universe, they're not. You think Tim Cook looks at an email? He's got an iPad, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Does Tim Cook use an iPhone? Unclear.
That's actually a good question. I've never actually seen him use a phone. I've seen him use an iPad.
Same. Wait, Nilay, do you have like family coordination software that you use?
No, we both work at home. Like we don't. You need to do
yell at her.
that stuff when you're like
just yell.
asynchronous.
Yeah,
But like we see each other all day long.
that's fair.
Like we are communicating. I think now Max is going to start in kindergarten. So like there's another force in the world that has to schedule us, and I think maybe now we will need to share a
You're
calendar.
gonna get that Google Calendar.
3 people who spend all day together, you should not need software to manage that relationship. I really cannot emphasize that enough. If you spend all day with 2 other people, you should not be like, I'd like to introduce some software.
There was a minute where I tried to get my wife on Trello for life planning purposes. And she was into it, but then we couldn't agree on how to format the Trello cards. So it all fell apart. I was just like, no, you have to use these things as checklists on the Trello cards. And she was just like, whatever, I'm going to write it all in the description. And like 3 days later, it just all fell apart. And now we just have like a series of context-free links sent in our text message chain. And that's how we talk to each other.
That's not good. Are you, have I converted you to Apple Watch walkie-talkie people yet? That's
No,
the thing I'm going to miss the most when we like go back to offices and lives and whatever.
That's fair. No, she's
You
a
tried
green
to
bubble.
do that.
Anna's a Pixel owner and a very happy one who will never switch. So when I'm like using or testing an Android phone, we can just like duo our faces off and it's great. But sadly, there will be no walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
The walkie-talkie's dangerous. No one in my family understands how to use it, so I had to turn it off because I'd be like just hearing the whistling from my wrist, whatever I was doing that day. And I was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. Revoked.
I mean, we are so deep in them. I mean, this is enterprise. This is when you say, have you integrated Microsoft Teams into your life? It's like, no. But have you been in the grocery store talking to your wrist about which bread to purchase? Yes.
Yeah.
Effectively on speakerphone too. Like it's the Apple Watch is loud now. And I'm just like, boop. Like I said, my entire life is just headed toward power moves of this kind.
Love it.
That's all I want. We should actually, we're kind of on the subject of like a bunch of behaviors changed in the pandemic work from home moment, and now everyone's sort of headed back to offices in various ways. One very funny example of that, Zoom called everyone back to office this week, which is choice. Like just perfectly choice.
Like when they're sitting there being like, we're about to send this like all staff email telling everybody to come back to the office. Like, do you think they knew that they were like, well, we're about to play ourselves so hard as soon as this email goes out?
If I'm Zoom, I'm doing this just to generate some headlines about Zoom. Because like no one's been talking about Zoom for weeks,
Fair.
you know? And it's like, you know what we should do is call everyone back to the office. Like everyone will be like, remember Zoom? Zoom was great. It was better than the Teams were forced to use now at work. Where's that IT guy spending the money in the strip club?
He's out there. He's like, oh, you want Zoom? I got you.
Alex did the thing again.
He's free with the budget.
And then Zoom also got itself in trouble this week, as you alluded to earlier, David.
Yeah.
They changed their terms of service. And I understand why they changed their terms of service. They just did it in the most ham-fisted, stupid way possible. So they basically changed their terms of service to say all the data that you're putting through Zoom has a license to. And they need that. If you run a service on the internet, you need a license to all the data that users put into your service for any infinite number of copyright reasons. Like you run servers, you're going to copy data from one server to another, you're going to introduce new features that might remix the user data, all this stuff. So you just need this like big, broad license.
The example you always use when we talk about this stuff that I really like is thumbnails. If they don't have the rights to use and change and copy your stuff. They can't make the little versions of the image that you click on to get the big version of the image. Like, it's that simple in many of these cases.
Oh yeah, they can't overlay text on those images because that's a derivative. You just write yourself the biggest, broadest license you can. And they added these lines that are like, for artificial intelligence and training models. And it's like everyone lost their mind.
So fast.
Because, just by the raw language of it, that means everything you say into Zoom can be used to train artificial intelligence.
Right. It's like, oh, we're selling your data to OpenAI to put into GPT-4, and we're allowed to now, is like the implication of that. And I remember, speaking of the strike, I saw a bunch of people in Hollywood tweeting like, oh, we can't use Zoom when we're creating stuff anymore. It's like people are so primed to see this stuff being taken from them and see this all being used against them in a lot of ways that Zoom did this the wrong way at exactly the wrong time.
If they did this like 3 months ago, nobody would have batted an eye. Until somebody like did a TikTok right now being like, did you know 3 months ago Zoom decided to steal all your data and give it to ChatGPT, and now you own nothing, including your face. Zoom does.
Right. So this specific block of text is in like almost every terms of service. And it's just like what you need to run a service, right? You need to take a perpetual, worldwide, non-exclusive, royalty-free, sub-licensable, transferable license to do stuff. Access, use, store, transmit, review, disclose, preserve, extract. Like, it's just a list of verbs. We are giving ourselves the broadest license to do verbs to your data. Because if you run a service, you want to do stuff.
You're going to do verbs.
You're going to verbs is what we're here for. It's not nouns.
Nope.
If you're living a noun's life, get off the couch. So they added this language about artificial intelligence. So you just kind of combine the like usual panic. Like every couple of years, like some teenager discovers the Instagram terms of service and people freak out and everyone posts that copy that's like, I do not give Instagram the permission to do shit. And then I have to like write a blog post that's an autocomplete of a blog post I wrote 4 years ago.
This is literally the case, by the way. Jay Peters wrote our story about this Zoom AI thing and has backlinks to one about Instagram from 2012 and one about Dropbox and Google Drive, also from 2012. And they are, I mean, like almost exactly the same post, both written by Nilay, both being like, guys, this is just the words you need to have things on servers. Everything's probably fine.
But so what's interesting about this is there's the general AI panic that is happening. It's like David was saying, even the writer strike has big elements of this. And then there's the actual problem, which is, if you just read the language, it sure sounds like that. So Zoom had to clarify that customer data is customer data, which is, if you are an enterprise software company, the worst thing to have to clarify. Like, that's the whole point of the enterprise software company. That's fundamentally why Slack and Discord are not the same. Right? Like Slack makes these big promises to big businesses about its relationship to them. And Discord is like, it's for gamers. We're going to mine all of your data. Like, it's just like a very different approach. And I think Zoom stepped in it, and we're going to see hundreds of other companies step in it, because at the end of the day, Zoom probably wants to use AI to do things like better beauty filters that people ask for in Zoom calls, to do things like automated transcripts that are better than the already AI-powered automated transcripts are doing. And what you want is to write yourself a broad license so you can innovate freely. And the reality is you're going to have to start asking permission step by step for all that stuff, because this panic is coming over and over again.
Yeah, I think part of me is like, okay, Zoom did this exactly wrong, right? Like they added a statement after all of this kerfuffle that said, notwithstanding the above, which is a deeply hilarious way to say, well, we wrote that badly, so here's some new words. Zoom will not use audio, video, or chat customer content to train our artificial intelligence models without your consent. Like, A, like you're saying, Nilay, wild that was not in there the first time. Yeah. But B, I kind of don't know, other than that one bit of, I think, clarification that some lawyer at Zoom didn't think they needed to do because it was inherently obvious, but is not obvious to people who like to track changes on terms of service. This is just a hard thing to do. And I think one of the things we've discovered with a lot of these tools is like the thing that happens when somebody starts recording a Zoom call and there's that very loud thing that goes like, this meeting is now being recorded. And they have this new thing with the AI meeting summaries where it like goes way out of its way to let you know that it's doing AI meeting summaries and you have to like click a thing to make the giant window full of text go away. We're just setting ourselves up for this like heinous user experience because these companies are afraid of our reaction to what they're doing in order to run their service. And it feels like there has to be a middle ground in there somewhere, but I don't know what it is. And it feels like it's going to be a while before we find it.
I think it's like, one, they have to repeatedly prove that they're not going to do nefarious things with your data. And that's pretty hard for them to currently do because everything we cover at theverge.com, there's so many examples of it, right? And so like they've kind of set themselves up to fail in that respect because they have misused data over and over and over and over again. And so to be like, no, but this time is different. Like nobody's going to believe that. You've got people who are way more savvy about this stuff than they were 10, 15 years ago. Yep. And so you've got to fix that. And I think until they can kind of earn that trust back, they're going to be in this place. And then the other side of it is like, people please like go read anything ChatGPT wrote that is longer than like 100 words and then come back to me and say that it's going to steal my job. Like, right. This stuff is not, we are very excited about it and everybody's like, oh, it's gotten so big. But at the same time, it is still very early days. ChatGPT and these other generative AI systems aren't going to be writing really good books. They'll write books, but they're not going to be readable, fun books most of the time.
I do wonder, though, if, to your point, Nilay, about companies running into this, if what they're going to learn from this is just barrel your way through it. Don't ask permission.
Oh, that's always what they've learned.
Don't be nice. Just do what Google did and say, yeah, we take your shit from the internet. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, the problem is Zoom exists in a world where Microsoft Teams exists.
Fair.
And Slack, right?
Like Google's approach to data on the internet right now, explicitly now in some of their terms, is if the crawler can see it, we can train AI with it.
Yeah.
And that's a nightmare choice, right? You have to say, don't index my website in Google search. Okay, like maybe like I'm going to shut my business down rather than let Google train its models on my data. Like you have to be Google to put yourself in that position. With Zoom, it's like, well, I'm just not going to use Zoom. Like,
right.
Like, the market works. The real answer, I think, is unfeasible in America. Like you need some sort of privacy law so that if they do overstep, there's a consequence and that keeps them in line. I don't know if we're going to get that.
We have to have a Congress that understands how computers work.
I just want you to try to, I keep using this example. You have to go into Chuck Schumer's office and be like, all right, there's a spectrum of AI things here from beauty filters in Zoom to the people on Reddit who faked Glorbo to make the AI write about Glorbo in World of Warcraft. Write a law, Chuck.
No.
Well, if that's the spectrum, the law is just all these things are very good. No problems.
Only good things there. Only upsides.
Yeah. All right. Let's end on my favorite story of the week. Same enterprise software, real middle section on enterprise software here. Speaking of work from home, the Zoom explosion, all this stuff, in the height of the pandemic, I don't know if you recall this. In the height of the pandemic, when everyone thought no one was ever going to go work in an office again, where it was all video conferencing forever, Verizon bought a company called BlueJeans for $400 million. This was a big deal. Like, the CEO of Verizon went on CNBC to announce it. They were talking about how they're going to roll it into 5G. Verizon, a big IT supplier. They're like, our distribution network, this is the future of business. BlueJeans powered by Verizon. Give all your employees Verizon 5G phones. The low latency BlueJeans experience will blow. Anyway, they shut it down this week.
It's because, have you ever used BlueJeans?
No. I'm a regular human.
Yeah, I had to. So that's what the Writers Guild of America used as its software. And so when I was a union steward, you'd have 200 people on a call in BlueJeans. And no one knew how it worked.
Should have gone on strike about that.
Yeah, really? It was brutal. It was just the worst app on the planet. And I remember when Verizon bought it, I was like, they'll make it good or they didn't understand that they bought garbage. And it sounds like it was the latter.
Let me just put that headline right next to something else. Verizon will soon raise prices on unlimited plans again.
Yep.
Maybe if you hadn't lit $400 million on fire buying a third-rate video conferencing app to make your 5G network better, you could have just kept the prices lower.
Just garbage software.
I just feel it's called BlueJeans. Like, this is why. Have I told you about the career I'm going to have when I leave The Verge, where I just walk into rooms and say, that name is stupid, and then somebody writes me a check for $50,000 and I leave?
And its logo wasn't pants.
What a stupid name. Oh, BlueJeans me. Like, are you serious? That company never had a chance for one second.
They had a bunch of marketing that was like, nothing fits like BlueJeans. Like, that's what they were doing.
That's true, and has nothing to do with video conferencing.
I'm just going to read you this sentence. We have made the difficult decision to sunset our suite of BlueJeans products.
There was more than one product?
We are taking off our BlueJeans.
It's bad. So if you have if you're on a Verizon Go Unlimited, Beyond Unlimited, or Above Unlimited, sure.
This is some real Disney streaming shit here. I don't like this.
You will be paying $3 more per month. They do this like clockwork every year. Because the new iPhones are coming out, and they don't want you on the legacy plans when you get a new iPhone. They want you to put you on the new, more expensive plans when you get the new phone. And so every year, they come out with new plans and new blah, 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 the new subsidies for the iPhones, and they make the old plans more expensive. Every year, like clockwork. And I'm just going to point out that if they had not lit $400 million on fire on a product called BlueJeans, maybe their investors would be happier with them. And maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have to raise prices so much. Also, maybe if we hadn't let T-Mobile buy Sprint, and there are actually 4 wireless carriers in this country, there'd be actual competition in the market. That's just me. We don't have a Dish Network Gen 5 Sys update for you today because they've done fuck all.
That sounds right.
That's accurate.
Just saying. Dish Network was supposed to, in a long, confusing deal brokered by the Trump administration, stand up a 4th 5G network using a technology called O-RAN that would compete with the giants.
Well, but now Dish Network is merging with EchoStar,
which is the same company. I just want to point out, if you are an old billionaire and you have 2 companies and you're like, I don't know, merge them up together, you have accomplished nothing. This is like when people try to make me care about Paramount and Viacom and CBS all merging, and the only good thing about it was that like the parent company was called National Amusements, which is like deeply funny. And it's like, but it's all just the same. Like one old guy owned all the companies, right? And you're like, yeah, and they're like, oh man, this is the greatest succession drama. It's like, no, it's all just the same company. Like none of this matters. That's Dish and EchoStar merging, which we wrote about this week, which is fine. I'm just pointing out we were supposed to have 4 wireless carriers in America. We let T-Mobile buy Sprint, which was a mess. And then we brokered a fake idea, instead of doing anything real, a fake idea about Dish Network making a 4th network, which, look around, it doesn't exist.
It's going really great.
Great. All right.
I would just say
Verizon's shutting down BlueJeans.
Dish and EchoStar could combine, rename their network to BlueJeans, and be heroes. It's just right there.
Look, we like asking for reader emails. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll read some emails. If you are a person beyond just my phone is faster or I've downloaded more pirated Netflix videos than ever in an airport, if you're someone who's actually like experienced the benefits of 5G, I want to hear from you. It cannot be that your bandwidth is just faster. I'm talking you did a robot surgery. Like one of these things they told us would happen with 5G. I have one example for everyone. I'll put it out there right now. Last night, I watched Taylor Swift announce 1989 Taylor's version from SoFi Stadium on like 45 different, like crystal clear live streams on TikTok. That is because NFL stadiums have millimeter wave 5G in them. That's why.
That's the future, baby.
Okay, I'll give you that one. I've taken that one off the table. They put so much bandwidth in NFL stadiums that I watched effectively pirate live streams of a Taylor Swift concert. Okay, that one's off the table. Give me something else. Email us, vergecast@theverge.com. I'm dying to know if anyone has done like a robot 5G surgery, if they've deployed a low latency application to a telecom company's edge data center. You let me know, because I haven't seen one other than these phones are slightly faster.
Does updating your laptop at a hotel count?
No, that's just more bandwidth.
But it was really nice bandwidth.
You cannot give me, I can pull down 1 gig speeds, blah, blah, blah.
I download Netflix so fast.
Right? You have to give me something on the order of tens of thousands of people in an NFL stadium live streamed crystal clear video to the internet all at once. Right? Not just you alone stood on a street corner with high bandwidth. Tens of thousands of people.
It's really nice.
Use the internet at once because of the Taylor Swift. Like that is and I give you that. That is a meaningful 5G thing that you could not do with an LTE network. Okay. But give me like one more. Like we did not do all of this for the Eras tour. At least I don't think we did. Vergecast is verge.com. Email us. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We have a little bit of a lightning round. There's some good stuff in the lightning round this week, I got to say.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, last week we asked about fart apps in the Vision Pro. I will say one person completely misinterpreted that conversation, got very mad at me on Twitter. What we were saying is when you have a new platform like the Vision Pro, the first wave of apps is like toys. It's like silly stuff, which was the first wave of apps on the iPhone. And then everyone like figured out what they could do because they'd made so many stupid, silly apps. And then you get the wave of mobile apps that has like revolutionized the culture. There's someone on Twitter who's like super mad at me that I'm not aware of the apparently successful enterprise VR apps that exist today. And it's true, I'm not. And also
BlueJeans VR coming to
whatever. But this was a prompt. Like, what's the first wave of silly apps for the Vision Pro going to be? We got some good answers.
We did. I have also come up with one that I think is correct, and I'm going to quit my job and make it, and I'm going to make a fortune in the first year. But we should go through the ones that we got because they're all generally.
That was a tease, David. That was a tease.
We'll come back.
All right.
I have to read through and see all of these to decide if I'm going to share my idea.
All right. So the first one, Josh W., his idea for a Vision Pro fart app, Drunk Vision, which makes a lot of sense, although you will puke right away.
Yeah, this also leads just throw up in your headset.
Yeah. And then that leads right into his second idea, which is Shroom Vision. I buy it, right? What if you could feel like Aaron Rodgers mode for your Vision Pro is like, it's also called Vision Pro. Mm-hmm. Very good. Justin G wrote, try on clothes app. It's Snapchat filters for your whole body, and all you have to do is look at someone else. Dangerous idea. My
immediate reaction to this was, oh, that seems really smart. And then 1 second later, I went, oh, no.
You gotta do some things to people.
But I will say the thing, like everyone at Snapchat keeps telling me that the AR try-on thing is real and people like it and use it. And if you could like put on your Vision Pro and stand in front of the mirror and like see how you would look and stuff, like there will be something like that, and I bet it'll work. I don't know about the all you have to do is look at someone else thing.
Yeah. There's some real consent issues there.
I don't want to be able to change other people's clothes. That seems like a
Here's
no-go.
what I'm thinking. Real-time revenge porn. Like there's like App Store review problems in there. We'll see. But I get it. People like that idea. Michael G says the obvious answer is fart clouds floating around the user with spatial audio fart sounds.
This literally is the answer. Spatial audio fart sounds is a thing that will happen. Like Michael has spoken that into existence, and this will happen now.
People took the fart app prompt a little too literally because Zach wrote transparency mode, and you not only hear a fart, but you see a plume of purple and green come out of butts. That's right up there with Snapchat filters for your whole body.
So
like, can you imagine? You're wearing a $3,500 headset. You're walking around the city and you're just like waiting for farts so you can see the like sparkle farts.
Oh, so wait. So you're imagining this not as a way to like make it look as if someone is farting. You're imagining like a fart recognition system.
Yeah, it's transparency mode for farts.
Oh. Yeah. So somebody farts and it's like the thing in the pool that turns your pee purple. It's just like
yeah, it's
AR
that.
Fart noises.
And every time it happens, you hear an Apple executive say something like, with the power of the MT chip. Christopher C. writes, slow-mo running from Baywatch in whatever space you are in, which I actually don't understand.
I think it's like you're putting it on and you're walking down the street, and in addition to all the other people, it's this person slow motion running towards
It's
you.
just Pamela
just
Anderson
Hasselhoff.
slowly running towards you.
It's good that you went to Pamela Anderson and I went to Hasselhoff.
That's nice.
That says it
Covering all
really.
bases.
All right, and then
like,
my last one, this is my favorite one because it includes the phrase benefit hypothesis.
Hell yeah.
It's very
Yes.
good. So Ruben wrote, app description, when the USA men's soccer team wins the World Cup, then your Apple Vision Pro will live stream a video of former President Donald Trump in prison.
Wow, that turned hard in the middle there.
It did. Benefit hypothesis. Both political parties will wonder how a former U.S. president spends his time in prison. 2, the curiosity will cause a positive effect on USA's overall soccer performance over time.
So they're going to want to win so bad so that we
Yeah.
can see that. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that we can all see it.
I don't know what this has
is-
to do with the Vision Pro, but it's an interesting incentive strategy.
And then he has some potential names here. Victory Watch Ex-President Edition, the Champions Presidential Stream, Goal to Watch POTUS in Prison.
These all sound like golf tournaments.
And then number 10 here at the end, Soccer Glory Presidential Story. I don't know, man. I like getting emails.
Wow.
So good.
Very good. If you have ideas, we already had the prompt. If you have had a meaningful 5G experience, you email me. And I'm taking the Eras tour off the table. So
We're going to get 0 emails about that. So what's your better idea?
We did get some emails from some Android gamers. We'll collate those and talk about those at a later time.
Once there's more than one of them.
That's basically what I'm saying. I don't want to dox the one person who emailed me. So
Give it a shot.
we've got send some more of those. But if you got ideas on like what the first wave of Vision Pro, I'm very curious.
Wait, can I tell you what my idea is? I've actually, I have been thinking a lot about this, and I actually think I'm right. I think there's going to be this like gigantic genre of what amounts to like fidget spinner apps in the Vision Pro. Nilay, you and I have both gotten this demo, and just the thing where you can sit there and just like touch your fingers together to do stuff is delightful. And I think about like do you guys remember that app when the iPhone first came out that was just a beer on the screen and you could like slosh it back and forth?
So it's going to be like popping buttons.
Yeah, exactly. That thing was like, oh, look at the accelerometer. This is cool. It does stuff when I move it. The equivalent of that on the Vision Pro is going to be like, I put my fingers together and something happens. So it's going to be like, there's going to be a bubble wrap app that makes $1 billion. There's going to be one of the little like popper fidget things that's going to make a ton, like spin something around with your finger. Like it's going to be huge.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. The person who's all mad at me like just missed the point. The point is when you have a bunch of new interface concepts, the first round of apps is just, can you trigger all the sensors and push all the buttons?
Right.
And that trains everybody to get excited about what else they can build in the way that the first round of iPhone apps was like, turn the phone sideways and it looks like you're pouring a beer. Like that didn't accomplish anything other than getting people used to motion controls on an iPhone.
Totally.
And like something like that will happen. I guarantee you the first round of Vision Pro apps is going to be more stuff like that. I can't say it's going to be Champion Story Presidential Glory.
Rooting for it.
We'll
It's
see.
like an ESPN
a lot
30
of
for
steps
30.
between here and there. Just not a clear business model path. But you can see how some of this stuff will happen. All right, lightning round. Cranz, you've got LK99, which is the fakest story. I will say the LK99 situation like exemplifies broken Twitter to the max.
Yes. 100%.
Like it exists because Twitter decided it would exist and like no one could stop it. And then we all had to talk about it. And then go ahead. You got it. It's you.
Yeah. It felt very, if people understood how science is normally reported and how major discoveries are normally reported, they would have been a little less hyped about this. Because generally speaking, when science has really cool big discoveries, they like to be like, hey, look at these really cool big discoveries we have. They don't like to leak two competing studies on the same product to a different forum and then have everybody argue over whether it's real or not and have very little proof. That's the opposite of science. Everybody who was like, it's all a conspiracy. No, they were incorrect. But LK99 is a substance there were a number of developers who came out and they said, oh, this could be the next superconductor. And the important thing about superconductors is that they're materials that are really, really good at moving heat at room temperature, or they're really, really good at conducting electricity at room temperature at normal pressure. Most superconductors cannot do that. We have superconductors today, but they usually have like either like thermal or pressure issues, and which makes them really, really like great to use, but really, really expensive to use. So something that just works at normal, like out of the box, is a huge, huge idea. And one of the things that like tells a superconductor from other things is the ability to levitate over magnets. But those aren't the only materials that levitate over magnets. So when everybody saw this partially, not even fully, partially levitating, they were like, oh my God, it's a superconductor. And it turns out that, oh my God, it's not. It's just one of those materials that levitates over magnets. And it sounds like there's definitely some cool use cases for it. It sounds like there's some interesting things here. But the researchers, some of the researchers already were trying to like sell it. And so this was part of their marketing hype to like sell it. And the other researchers were not. And the superconductor research space was already dealing with some drama because some other people had previously claimed.
Can you just say, the superconductor research space was already dealing with some drama?
Oh yeah, there was already drama because there was already another like study that was like, oh yeah, we've got the new superconductor. And it turned out it was all fake and wrong and terrible. So like people keep coming into this space because it's a very it's the potential for profit's huge here. So everybody wants to find that superconductor and then make lots of money.
Can I ask a really dumb question? I confess I have like not really followed this story because the night I sat down and was like, I'm going to read the hell out of LK99 was the same day everybody was like, never mind, this is nothing. So I basically have not followed this story at all.
Okay.
And this is where I ask a very dumb question about superconductors, which is like, let's say in theory, this had been the thing that some of these people thought it was. So what? Like, why did this become such a like real world excitement phenomenon so fast?
The big thing for superconductors and where it would be really powerful is like right now superconductors are used in a lot of power plants and stuff like that. But if you can get a cheap, super reliable superconductor, which if this had been one, would have ticked those boxes, right? It would have been cheap. It would have been easy to produce. And just, yeah, great. If you can do that, then you can conceivably make like electric cars, anything that runs on power, just way more efficient because it's able to move that with and without like as much heat and stuff like that. It's super efficiently.
So instead, in theory, of doing what we do with silicon now, which is only a semiconductor, you could do it much better with a superconductor.
Right. You could do it so much better. And so like it would just make things way faster. It would make things way less power hungry. Like it would be in a lot of ways magic.
I just want to give you this quote from our piece, which is, if you start with a rock, you end up with a rock.
Yeah. And this was the thing. What I didn't get about the Twitter side of this was how so many people were like, this is crazy. It's so cool. And then they'd go talk to researchers. The researchers were like, we're skeptical. And they're like, you're in the pocket of somebody. You hate science.
Yeah. This is what I mean about like the broken blue check version of Twitter that we have now, like, is made for hype cycles.
Yeah.
And every kind of like crypto scammer AI thread boy had a moment with LK99, and the media is so organized around having Twitter be its assignment editor that this obviously fake thing like ended up everywhere. Like we wrote about it because there was so much interest in it.
Yeah, we weren't gonna write it. Like we talked about this when it first popped off, and we were like, oh, we're not gonna write about it because all of the reasons that I talked about, which was didn't seem reliable and everything else. But then so many people were writing about it. We were like, okay, well, we have to like explain how this is all incorrect and they're wrong, and that this isn't a big deal, which is a bummer of a story to write.
Yeah, I'm gonna quote Michael Norman, Distinguished Fellow and former Director of Material Science Division at the Argonne National Laboratory. When you start with a rock, chances are you will end up with a rock.
That's awesome.
It's a rock. But it's just like, to me, the thing was, I mean, it's interesting and it captured the imagination. You love capturing. It's like every so often, I remember early in my Engadget tenure as like a baby blogger, someone had claimed to have invented a perpetual motion machine.
It was Lisa Simpson.
But like, you know, they were gonna like hold a video demonstration. And they called in the thing, and like we were like, I was just like, guys, this is bullshit. Like, look at it. And there was this answer, which I still think about all the time, which is the audience is interested and it's a service to go and ask the questions and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but we can just answer the questions now. Like, it's definitely not going to work. It didn't work in the end. Surprise. But it's just like this cycle. But because Twitter is in the middle of it, like the idea that something has gone viral on Twitter still carries meaning in the world, even though the meaning is sort of divorced from the mechanics of Twitter. And so it's like, oh yeah, like a bunch of like grifters started doing threads about what it means for there to be a room temperature superconductor, and without ever verifying that there was a room temperature superconductor. And then everybody wrote about it because everyone was excited, including our audience who basically asked us to write about it.
Yeah. It makes me think of all the TikTok trends that like parents and schools get terrified about that weren't actually trends, but it was just like one person made a video and then some person made a video warning you about the video. And then everybody latched onto that. And it's like, this was never actually a thing that kids were doing, but now we're afraid of the thing that kids aren't doing. It's like, this cycle is bad news.
Yeah. It's the I call it the local news cycle. Once when as a child in Wisconsin, the local news once reported that kids were getting high by drinking too much water, which is a real thing that you can do. I've since learned. And my mom was like, how much water have you been drinking? And I was like, not enough, bro. I've been drinking a lot of Miller Lite. Like,
yeah, she's not worried about that though. The water's the problem.
Anyhow, I've got a quick update on the Mr. Beast situation. You recall last week, Mr. Beast sued the company that was doing his ghost kitchens for Mr. Beast burgers, trying to get out of the contract because there was no quality control. Surprise. They have now sued him back for $100 million.
Yeah.
Saying that he's gotten more value out of them and he's become more famous because of the burgers. I don't know, man. That's your lightning round update. I think Mr. Beast versus the burger company it's like the pinnacle of influencer culture in a way. It is directly related to like there are a lot of thread boys threading on the tweets about how Mr. Beast burger was like the future of dining.
Oh yeah.
All of those people should be forced to apologize. Here's my theory. If you were a thread person on Twitter doing threads like that, and then you want to join Instagram threads, Instagram should enforce that you have to post 50 apologies first.
And eat 50 Beast burgers.
Eat 50. You have to do a Beast burger challenge. If you have ever written a 1 of 99 Twitter thread about how Mr. Beast burger was the future of dining, I think you should have your platform credentials revoked until you eat 50 Beast burgers.
I think that's fair.
I like it. I will say, listen, I'm not a lawyer, but the idea that Mr. Beast is only famous because of the burgers does not make a lot of sense to me.
It's also, by the way, his actual work, it is clear he cares a lot about the quality of his actual work.
Yep.
Like a Mr. Beast video is like a rigorously edited jewel of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can see why he's pissed the burgers are raw. Like, it's just like very obvious.
Yeah.
Anyhow, all right, Dave, what's yours?
Mine is just a small threads update, which is a very cool little thing that happened where you can now use your Mastodon profile and your threads profile essentially as verification systems. So you can go to Mastodon and say, you know, my threads account is this, and then actually use your threads account to verify that, which at a very small level is like, it doesn't matter. It's like a teeny tiny feature, but it is, and Instagram people have been saying this is the first sort of meaningful step Threads has made into like the ActivityPub decentralized social media world. And we've said a bunch of times, like there are lots of reasons to believe Threads will never decentralize in the way that it has promised, but the people who are building the thing continue to loudly say they are going to do it. And this was sort of the first like real world instantiation of that. And I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, it is like a very little thing, but it is true that Threads engineers were posting like, hope you believe us. Like we're taking these baby steps.
They were so proud about it. It just makes me happy that like how excited people were for it. I'm not excited for it, but everybody was so just pumped. I don't care, but everybody else was so pumped.
So I just want to say, by the way, that every time I write about this stuff or talk about it on a show like this, the overwhelming response is people don't care about decentralized platforms. That's not how you win user experience, blah, 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 blah. And That's a stupid argument. people didn't care about anything until they realized why it was cool and started using it. That's how things work. And in this case, like, I will continue to plead loudly that decentralized social media is a good idea and we should pursue it. And you should care as a person because it will make better products and a better internet. And my number one goal in life is to convince random strangers that decentralized social media is a concept they should care about. So here I am.
I'll just flip that around. These clowns forced us to care about crypto. Right? Like the money that flowed into that ecosystem to try to force us to care about it. And the Verge and the Vergecast audience, by and large, was like, don't care about this. Like, fully rejected. But it's weird that because there's not that much money in this system, that people are like, no one will ever care about this. And like, it's the things are not user experiences. The things are the things that enable other people to make products and services that compete, which is the thing that we care about the most.
Yeah. It's like the moment that the open web started to beat AOL, there were probably a lot of people who are like, who cares? Everybody's on AOL. And it's like, no, this other thing is better.
Yeah.
And like, give me a minute and I'll prove it to you. And like, that's how I feel about the future of social stuff right now.
And at the end of the day, Twitter is going to buy Time Warner. That's the final form of Twitter. Is they're also going to own Batman for some reason. All right, the last one. We got. I had to end here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels right.
Unfortunately.
There's a new EV Escalade. It's called the Escalade IQ. I love it. It is so expensive. It's $130,000. But it is hot. It's huge. It's just
the biggest car I've ever seen. It's
so
ridiculous.
big. It's not as big as the Escalade ESV. It's not as big as the biggest Escalade, but it's still huge. It's bigger than a regular Escalade. 3 rows, beautiful, 450 miles of range, mostly because the battery is the size of a Sherman tank. It has the the crab walk mode that the Hummer EV has, so it can like go sideways. The thing's cool. $130,000. I sent a photo of it to Becky with just the words "Hear me out," and she wrote, "That's hot."
Oh, congratulations.
Good, right? I was like, what if we sell everything and buy an EV Escalade? And she was like, I'll think about it. It's hot. Go look at pictures. GM, they've been saying this was going to happen. No CarPlay. Huge screens on the inside. The inside of this car looks hot. It's like wall-to-wall screens.
It's a 55-inch screen across.
Yeah, it's an LED LCD that wraps around. The sort of climate cluster is another screen. In the back, there's a third screen. Screens for days. And they're saying no CarPlay or Android Auto. Again, they said this was going to happen ages ago. No one believed them. Here's the new Escalade, and they've done it. Now, importantly, Google built in, so you get Google Maps, you get Google, all the stuff that you might want off a phone, but no Android or CarPlay. I don't know if this is a good idea. I haven't used it, haven't seen the car, many questions. But this is the moment when big car makers say, when Cadillac says, you know what, you're going to buy an Escalade with or without CarPlay. Also, probably you're in the back seat of this Escalade, so it doesn't matter. But like they're betting people are going to buy Escalades without CarPlay because what they want is an Escalade.
Okay, Nilay, you are obligated by law to think this is a good idea, so congratulations. What I would just say is I know I came back to the show and said that I agree that CarPlay is bad, but the thing is I'm looking at the picture of this screen right now, and it essentially, if I can describe it, it basically, the photo I've seen here in our piece looks like sort of 3 distinct sides. One side shows like nav and car information. The middle is kind of classic infotainment. And on the right is, I don't know, like a 15-inch across screen that just has 7 icons. Like this is what we're doing with our screens. Like here's 7 icons. This is awful. This is the worst UI design I've ever seen in my life.
No. So you're looking at that. That's like a menu screen. So I think, again,
there's a Hulu app. Do you want to watch Hulu on this tiny screen on your
And YouTube Kids?
So the screen all the way on the right is in front of the passenger, and that is basically a TV.
A really skinny candy bar
it's a
television.
really weird
It looks
TV.
like it's got HDMI input.
It does have. I have one of these in my car. So we have a Jeep with a passenger screen.
With
it has
HDMI?
it has a filter on the front of it, so you can't see it from the driver's seat, and it has HDMI in and some apps. Great.
The future.
I've used it once to stream a football game to that thing, and the entire time I just told my wife that I was watching football, and she's like, I don't care. You often do that on your phone anyway. But I was like, no, it's in the car. Like, but that's what that thing over there in front of the passenger is this belief the car industry has that passengers want a dedicated screen that is a TV.
Well, it's a dedicated screen for them to put ads on, which is all fine and good. I'm just saying the software design here is garbage.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have not seen the thing. So I don't know what mode that is in, but you're right. You've got a thing that is a cluster all the way on the left, like that's the instrument cluster. You've got your standard infotainment, and then there's a set of new ideas on the right of the car that honestly no one in the car industry has figured out, but there should be a screen in front of the passenger that is a TV. You just watch. It's coming to all of the cars.
And there's another screen right in front of the gear shifter. Like that's
the weird, crazy info. That's the climate control and blah, blah, blah screen.
Because you don't have that in the other 55 inches.
Nope.
I just worry about these freezing.
Right. So like, here's what we don't know. Is this fast? Is it responsive? Is the interface good? David thinks the interface is bad. I do. We have spent but a few minutes looking at this thing. My point is GM's position, and I guarantee you many, many more car makers' position over time is going to be, we are not letting Apple take over the user experience of our vehicles. Mm-hmm. And we think, in particular, I think GM thinks with the Escalade, the people will buy Escalades even without CarPlay and Android Auto because it has Google Maps, which is the thing that people care about the most. And that's going to be that Rivian is already there. Tesla has been there forever. And I think they're basically looking at what people are doing on these phone apps, or on these phone projection systems and saying, you know what, by and large, they are running Google Maps. So if we just sign the deal with Google and run Google Maps on our thing, yep, we can run ads on the weird Hulu integration over on the right. Yes, we can as EV charging networks, blah, 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 we can monitor the cars better. We can do telemetry, you can sell your data, all that stuff that seems kind of gross. But fundamentally, they're saying, look, what you want out of this is Google Maps, and we've signed the deal with Google to give you Google Maps, and Google is waiting there with open arms.
I don't think that theory is wrong. I just don't think there is any evidence in the history of cars that says car makers can make good software.
Or the history of TVs. This is the exact same thing TVs have done. TVs have been doing this for ages. They're like, we're going to do it. Samsung ties in. And then you go buy an Apple TV and you plug it in and you go away. And you just can't do that with this because I guess you plug it into the HDMI port.
Yeah. I mean, you can just plug your phone into the HDMI port and run off your phone. But only on that screen that the passenger gets. We'll see. It's a $130,000 EV Escalade.
So we will see.
The risk profile for this car is very low. I think the people who are going to spend $130,000 on EV Escalade have people who use their phones for them.
There. Yes. That's going to be you someday.
That's my dream.
Yeah. We're going to get the Becky review of this car someday.
It's going to be great. All right. That's it. David, you have a new newsletter coming out. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. If you're listening to this on Friday, you have 1 day to sign up. It's called Installer. And the idea was basically to just take all of the cool stuff on the internet and put it all into one place. It's there's new apps every week. There's new stuff to watch. There's new games to play. There's new cool creators coming out all the time. And I spend a lot of time just pouring this stuff into random documents and never doing anything with them. And I was like, I am going to do better at finding new stuff. And I've been asking people to send stuff, installer@theverge.com. Anytime you see anything cool anywhere on the internet, send it to me. I've already gotten a ton of really fun stuff. There's a lot of really fun stuff in the first issue. You can read it on the site every Sunday, but you can also subscribe and get it in your inbox every Saturday. And we're going to do lots of things like have beta invites and access to cool stuff and giveaways and stuff. So it's a big advantage to be a day early. It's theverge.com/installer. I think the first issue is really fun, and I hope it will be forever. It's going to be awesome. Nilay's in the first issue. I made Nilay send me his home screen and tell me about all the truly unhinged apps that he seems to use every day. So if you want to know what Nilay's phone looks like, check it out.
I do not know why Spotify is on my home screen. Apple Music. I took that screenshot. I was like, why is this here? Uncurated to the extreme. All right. One more thing. We're doing cybersecurity questions on the Wednesday show, right, David? Give us a call. 866-VERGE11 with your cybersecurity questions. I'm having a lot of fun doing reader feedback this summer. One question I have for all of you, also let us know if you like it. If you like it when we're reading the emails and doing the voicemails, that would be really useful. We are having fun. I just want to make sure you think it's a good part of the show. Let us know. Also, if you've ever had a meaningful 5G experience. It's driving me bonkers. All right, that's it. That's the Vergecast. Rock and roll.